Hey guys, this is Jamie. So today I'm gonna be talking about how I believe immigration changed over the past, let's say, 30 years. So I do feel like specifically now in a world where we have a very large European refugee crisis, and obviously it's not like this is the first refugee crisis which has happened to our world, but this is one of the largest, which has media coverage, which has people talking about, and obviously, me having Ukrainian roots, it's something I watch very carefully and feels obviously like it hits more just because I happen to be of Ukrainian heritage. Now, when I say Ukrainian heritage, I do not come from a Ukrainian speaking family. I come from a Russian speaking family, and my views might be not the ones you expect. But today is not about that. If you want to see my political whatever's on Ukraine, you're free to see that on my channel. Anyways, I was talking. So I wanted to talk about immigration. So I have immigrated, I have lived in many different places throughout my entire life, up to the point that me and my partner sat and were like, yeah, we haven't been stable in a country for so long as we have been in Portugal. But anyway, so I wanted to start with the fact that while I was just thinking about this with my partner, uh, I really want to highlight this video a lot about the UK. And I have spoken about immigration in the UK quite a while back, but I still want to touch on it once again, and it will be one of the main examples throughout this video. So even before I go into my own experience, I can say that I've known people who have gone to the UK even before I did, and it was before there were such strict immigration rules, not just in the UK but everywhere else. I feel like before, back in the days, specifically like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, back when we were in like a more liberal, a more Labour, Tony Blair era, I feel like immigration was more accepted, and it was different in a way because back then it felt like people didn't really have to fit in just as strictly as they do now. For instance, like, I knew people who uh, even had like fake IDs and just went around with them and no one gave a shit. And they would go like by names of other famous people who would be famous in the country of origin, and they wouldn't know, and they would just tell about it, and now they're just like members of British society. And I'm not saying that everyone was illegal, Jesus Christ, but it was a different era. There were different rules. There were more artists, there were more people who just moved in, just wanted to blend in. The universities were more diverse. In general, if you think, even looking at BBC shows or whatever, the diversity really kind of started seeping through, and now it's just like watching just white people on BBC, you know? And even if you look at like London streets or like because I remember London from when I was little. I remember London when I was a teenager. And, well, I can get an estimate of how London looks these days. And in general, it's not that the people don't look welcoming. Well, they do look rude, in my opinion. But when you start talking to people about it, like, I have a very close friend of mine who lives next to London, and I have another close friend of mine who lives in London. And so one recently moved to the UK, and they've been getting like really, really a lot of sort of racist, xenophobic hate, and it just happens. Like, turn off your bullshit music, turn off your ethnic shit, different slurs. Obviously, as well, the UK is going through a massive, massive transphobic phase. So being trans doesn't help at all. And even back when I was in the UK, I could already feel that there was this massive sort of unwelcoming sort of disposition from the population. Like, I remember I was taking an English course in my hires, it was in Scotland, and I had a teacher who said that my English is very, very bad, and that foreigners shouldn't be taking English classes, specifically English literature classes, as they do not know how to speak English. And I got into a massive fight with her up to the point that I had to transfer from the middle of my course to another teacher because she was just not accepting at all. And we tried for everything. And in general, there was always a lot of hoops to do via visa and etc. And back, for instance, when my relatives were studying in the UK in London, there wasn't so many hoops to jump through, up to the point that I even got my visa refused because they miscounted my funds in my accounts because I needed to go to the embassy, which was in Poland, and they thought my currency wasn't Polish currency, despite the fact that it was obvious that I came from Lithuania. So there were like these minor mistakes, which would have ended up costing me my years of studying. And to think of that, like back in the day, I've had people tell me that there weren't any back checks. The classrooms were more diverse from kindergarten to God knows when university, and people were just more welcoming, and it was truly a melting pot back in the day. And right now, it's just a bunch of white people running around, mostly chavs, fighting for more Brexit rights or whatever, from what I see, and it's a very different atmosphere. So I feel like this is where the UK is going, and I'm not just gonna nail the UK for this, but even if you look, for instance, like I was talking about this partner, like France, because I feel like immigration remained roughly the same. But for instance, you had different, I remember during the Sarkozy era, you had a lot of different laws which were going, like banning a woman from wearing hijabs, different religious, against religious laws. And in general, I feel like now when people move, they really try to sort of blend in. Like, even I myself, like, I don't speak much about my culture. I just try to speak a lot of Portuguese. I try to understand a lot of Portuguese slang. I try to understand a lot of Brazilian slang. And I really try to make sure that I understand all the references. While, well, it's not that I'm being ungrateful, but obviously people do not understand my references. And even when it comes to friends as well. Like, sure, I am blessed with a very, very good close friend of mine who is really interested in my culture. And I'm also blessed to have my partner who lived in Russia for a few years, so we speak Russian. And obviously, he understands my references, or he's curious to know where I come from. I'm curious to know where he comes from, being Brazilian. But it becomes on a one-to-one basis. It becomes situations of like one instance rather than before when you'd be in kindergarten, people would try to talk about their cultures, and teachers would speak openly. They would bring books from their countries so that people would understand. Well, right now I feel like we're in this bizarre globalization where we're not tolerant. We're really nationalistic everywhere. And there's a lot of fascism going around, obviously. The war is happening, wars are happening. And everyone just tries to really blend in, because you kind of have this fear, even, that if you don't blend in, you'll just be kicked out. So, yeah. And before, I feel like the communities were much more vast, bigger, and people were interested to learn your culture. Well, now it's more of a shut up and blends in, and it also goes to religious things. And what I find ironic is that I remember I'd have this discussion like 10 years ago, and people would show their racism towards Muslims, for instance. And they would be like, when I go to like Saudi Arabia or something, or some other Middle East countries, or Arab countries, they would be like, I have to wear a hijab, and they repress my freedom not to wear it. But then here, we're also repressing people's freedom as well. We're really forcing people to blend in. We're really forcing people to give up on their culture. Obviously, religion, I feel like, is obviously not in the best of conditions. A lot of people are obviously questioning religion. A lot of people do not have faith, and that's okay, because I, for instance, I used to be religious, now I'm not religious. And in general, we start questioning, and also a lot of things happen because specifically because we're in the LGBT community. We look back at our history and we see people who raised us. We see how the church treated, how the countries treated us, how everyone treated us, and how the UK is treating now, how the US is treating now. And or like another thing, like Germany, right? After World War II, they felt that they should take Jewish people in, and they took a lot of Soviet Jews into Germany so they could immigrate there and settle. And I was actually talking many years ago with a close friend of my family, saying that he felt like no matter how hard he worked, the Germans expected him to work harder. And so that kind of goes against my idea that it was better before, but and then that goes back to the point, was it actually better before? Then you have to say that we always had to learn the language regardless of where we are. We always had to work harder as immigrants, and we always had to prove a lot of things. So for instance, like even when I talk to my family and they're like, oh, will you find a job? Will you manage to stay? And etc. It's more of a, because we're scared that we won't be accepted. And in my case, for instance, like first generation Lithuanian, Ukrainian blood. And I just don't blend in with Lithuanian society. I'm a trans gay guy. They don't want anything with me. I can't get my name changed for like 5 years now. So where do I belong? So it's always been an interesting question, even me to myself, like, where is home for me? Where do I belong? And I've always sort of grasped onto different places where I've moved and tried to make it my own, even though the culture's different, this is different, that's different. And even now with the war, it's really interesting because people tend to blame, for instance, Russians for because they feel like if they're Russian by blood or Russian by living, that they should speak up against Putin. And it's like, well, even those who spoke out, even those who went against Putin, why is it their fault that this is happening? No, blame the people who actually wanted this war. Blame the people who are the catalysts. Blame the government. Why should you blame people who are just trying to survive in their own country, who didn't have the sources to immigrate, who didn't have the desire to immigrate, who just really didn't have the sources? Was it due to financial reasons, to personal reasons? Because in this day and age, we grow up and we're pretty much told that we need to go to this uni, go to this, go to that. And it's still sort of like an extravagance and even a luxury to live elsewhere, to find your life elsewhere. Because parents will still like say, oh, it's better if you're home, it's better this, better that. And no one really wants you to move. Yes, people move due to necessities. War is one of them. But at the end of the day, we need to understand that the idea of living abroad collapsed and it's not as welcoming. No one wants to know our culture. The communities aren't as vast. We just all blend in and we just want to stay in a place where we're safe. And that's the reality of it. So I get really offended by like different races, xenophobes, people against immigration. People really move because they just want a life, which they can't have where they're, born or whatever. So yeah, I ended up going on a very sort of dramatic note. But, it's the way it is, and I really hope that people will be kind to the refugees. Obviously, I've been in Portugal for a while, so I know things now. But I really do hope that everyone who's moving right now, due to war, due to circumstances, has an easier time to fit in. Also, just take care of the people who move in. Like, even specifically at this point with the refugees and everything, no one's having an easy time. So, just be kind. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry that I was without makeup. I'm really, really tired and I'm ill. I don't know if it's heard from my voice. So if you like this video, please subscribe. Please click the thumbs up. And I would appreciate it if you could share it because I want to get monetized someday. Thank you.